you in the mood, don't it? That's some good stuff right there. That's the Jake Johnson Band playing us into the Sunday afternoon title fight. I'm ready to rock and roll. I got my gloves on. I got my hands wound. I'm sweating like a pig, and I'm ready to hit the ring. How's everybody doing? Hey, Darlene, how are you? Good to see you. Oh, what a lovely day it is. We still don't know who the president is, despite the fact that the media has called it, although the media has no legal right to call it. So much for that. I think this is going to be another one of those Al Gore situations, if you know what I'm saying. We never had a President Al Gore. I don't think we're going to have a President Biden. But it could go in his favor, because cheaters be cheating. And they be cheating hard. So should it go in his favor, I will do the honorable thing and call him my president, because that's what he'll be. I won't like him a damn bit. I won't stand for anything that he does, but he is my president. And that's what integrity looks like. I'm doing fine. Can't you see the pleasure and the aura of beauty just dripping off of me? I'm doing fantastic. I can't complain. Today, we are going to go through 3 videos, because the first one's kind of short. Well, it's the 20th one, but you know what I'm saying. So to get the good out of me, we're going to hit 3 of them today, I think. Yeah, I see the joy in your face. Yeah. Woo! It's a thinly veiled mask. Today we have a theme. I'd like to start the show off with asking you a question. It's a very simple question. Fake it till you make it. That's it. That's it. Amen. It's a very simple question. You just have to ask yourself. Don't answer me. Answer yourself. And that is, are you in service to anything? Who do you serve? Who do you call your master? Do you have a master? Because if you don't service something, you don't find purpose. Because in service, you find purpose. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, Jake, you're on a podcast. Aren't you doing that for yourself? Aren't you trying to bolster your own self up? Well, not exactly. You see, I started the first serious job I ever had when I was 11 years old. I had part-time jobs before that, but this is the first time I ever went to work full-time. And that was block laying, carrying big, heavy bricks. I graduated from that into roofing somewhere around 12 or 13, somewhere in that area. And I graduated from roofing to stucco, and from stucco to ironwork. And in ironwork, I learned a trade. I became a millwright. I became a pipe fitter, a helper, general everything. I've done just about every kind of work you can think of under the sun involving construction. And in my mid-20s, I decided to go to college and get an education. So I am college educated. Today, in my line of work, the work that I've done most of my life, today, I could go get a job right now with a reputable company making $60 an hour, plus time and a half. So if you're counting, that's $120 an hour. And then there's overtime, which is double, which that makes it $240 an hour after 4 days. That's 10-hour days, 7 days a week. I'd have to go to Egypt in the middle of a war zone to get it, but I could get it. So in the world of possibilities of things that I would do to elevate myself and do things for myself, the very last thing on that list would be YouTube podcaster. Just so you know that I am in service every time you see my face. I'm serving my Father. I'm trying to do something positive for the world before I leave it. I'm trying to do that in the only way I know how, by doing what I'm good at, which is not very lucrative. Contrary to popular belief, there's more important things in the world than money, or prestige, or power, or respect. You have to understand that you need to be in service to something. Because if you're not in service, you're just consuming. You are a vacuum cleaner. You suck air in. What you blow out can't be breathed as carbon dioxide. Has to go through a plant in order to become oxygen again, which takes away from the life of the plant. You consume food, you put out waste that can only be eaten by things that grow. It could be fertilizer, but it can't be eaten by people. So you are, in fact, a vacuum cleaner. The thing that makes it different is your service, your willingness to give to a thing higher than you. To admit that you're not the highest thing on the food chain, to yourself. So who is your master? Who do you serve? Keep that thought in mind as we go through these videos that we're about to start. And understand that while I'm going to do something spectacularly against character, against type in this video, I'm going to agree with the atheist on several of his points. Because he's not wrong. But he is wrong overall, because the Bible, number one, is not chronological in its order. Never has been, never claimed to be. Why people assume it should be is beyond me. It's not a book. It's a series of books, and they're not in chronological order. It's also a book that's a guide. It's written for the express intent of someone else reading it and understanding it, which means they do things like call a thing before it's named the thing it's named. It happens all the time in the Bible. I'll point it out when it happens. And the reason it happens is not poor writing. It's because it's trying to describe to you how that thing came to be what it's called. Not that it didn't happen until it was written, because these books were all written after the fact. All of them. None of them were written in person on the day that the thing happened. Abraham is a man that I wouldn't agree with if I knew him personally. I wouldn't like him. I don't like some of the things he did. I don't like some of the choices he made. That does not negate the fact that it happened. Understand that. The Bible is telling you it happened. It's not telling you that it's the right thing to do. It's just that it happened. This is the events that occurred. Doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. It's just explaining to you how it got to be where we are now. With that said, hey, April, didn't see you there. Snuck up on me. We can jump into the first video. You're probably going to get kind of pissy about some of the things he says. Try to contain your anger, because what he's saying is wrong, and we all know it's wrong. And I'm going to do my level best to correct everything he says and put the record out there for someone to find and read or see and understand. That's the best I can do.
Genesis 20. Remember Genesis 12? Well, then you're about to experience some deja vu. Now, Abraham moved on from there into the region of the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur. For a while, he stayed in Gerar. And there, Abraham said of his wife Sarah, "She is my sister." Then Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah and took her.
Abraham had a father who had more than one wife. And one of his wives, or concubines, birthed a daughter named Sarah. And his wife birthed a son named Abraham. As they grew up, probably in different parts of the world because they had different parents, they come together as husband and wife. They are, in fact, half sister and brother. They have the same father, they have different mothers. But they're also husband and wife. This is not a lie. This is the way it was in those days. There wasn't a whole lot to choose from in the desert, in small communities. You married whom you could get. And also, this is before Moses. Moses is the one who laid the law down, who said that incest was improper. Before that, it was not a big deal. And it was the way of the world, and everyone did it, not just Abraham. So, stop trying to compare what he did then with what we do now. There's two different worlds here.
Oh, so now he's admitting it again. You know, a while
He never didn't admit it. He's always said that she was his sister and his wife.
back in Genesis 12, Pharaoh married Sarah, thinking she was Abraham.
Pharaoh took Sarah into his harem. He did not marry her. He took her to be married to her, but then found out she was already married. He never married her. He never had sex with her. This is something he's going to try to convince you of by continually reminding you that she's been with other men. She has not. None of these men slept with her. There's only been 3, by the way.
Abraham's sister, and therefore not anybody else's wife. Pharaoh then became furious when he found out he had been lied to, but he gave Abraham money and livestock and slaves. So I guess Abraham's selling her body again to see.
I don't know what that means, April. Stop being a monkey? Is that what you're saying?
What else he can get out of her. The weirdest thing about it? We're gonna hear the same lie again in 6 chapters.
It's not a lie. It's the fact. He's not lying. He is using truth to his advantage. You see, every time he goes into a town with his hot wife, the king of that town takes interest in her. And when she goes in, the king assumes that she's single and tries to mate with her. Then he finds out she's married and feels guilty about trying to mate with her and pays them money so that they don't feel bad. And then Abraham gets richer and richer and richer and richer. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying that's how he came to be of power.
And why are all these men so eager to sleep with a 90-year-old woman? But God came to Abimelech.
People in those days lived to be about 850 to 900 years. When she was 90, she would have looked like a 20-year-old. You understand? The lifespan is longer, so the gestation period is longer. A 20-year-old would look like an infant. Longer lifespan is common sense. Use your brain, son. Why do you think everybody wants to get with that 90-year-old? 'Cause she's smoking.
Abimelech in a dream one night and said to him, "You are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken. She is a married woman."
Now, notice that in a dream that night, Abimelech is told by God that he's as good as dead if he touches that woman, meaning he hasn't touched her. You see? No sex. Not pimping his wife out.
Now Abimelech had not gone near her, so he said, "Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? Did he not say to me, 'She is my sister'? And didn't she also say, 'He is my brother'?"
Yes, he did. And yes, she did. And no, God won't.
"I have done this with a clear conscience and clean hands." Nothing like God warning you in a dream that you are so... But kudos to Abimelech for calling God out on his threat. Don't be mad at me, God. If they lied, blame them.
Correct. I agree with you.
I'm not the bad guy here. Then God said to him in the dream, "Yes, I know you did this with a clear conscience, and so I have kept you from sinning against me. That is why I did not let you touch her. Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, you may be sure that you and all who belong to you will die."
Now, that's a very serious threat, and one that Abimelech takes very seriously, because he recognizes that God is speaking to him. He also recognizes the truth that God just laid on him, that Abraham is a prophet. That means that he speaks with God directly, or God speaks with him directly. God doesn't do that anymore. There will come a time when he does it again, but it ain't here yet. I don't think. Could be. I don't know. But, number one, Abraham's a prophet. Number two, he has a wife, and that's his wife. And number three, he's telling Abimelech, if you dare touch that woman or do anything against Abraham, you and everybody you know and everybody you're related to is going to die. Now, a minute ago, he said that I have caused you to not sin against me. The atheist here is going to take issue with that. To that I say, you cannot draw one single breath without God's permission. Not one. You can't bat your eyes without his permission. So, does he take credit of what Abimelech does? Absolutely.
Oh, so God is taking credit for Abimelech not touching Sarah.
Yes.
That seems unfair. Notice what just happened here. God told Abimelech he was as good as dead for taking a married woman into his harem.
Yes.
Then Abimelech said, I didn't know she was married. Blame the people who lied to me.
Yes.
And God responds with, okay, you're right. But you will be dead if you do anything to her.
Yes.
Why are we punishing Abimelech?
We're not. We're warning Abimelech. He didn't get punished. He didn't touch her. Therefore, he got blessed. You see, God sent Abraham, a poor man, into foreign lands to build his fortune. This is the way he chose to do it. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm saying that's what he did. Every person who blessed Abraham, regardless of how they came by doing it, God blessed that person and their families, and they became great nations. He didn't punish them. He blessed them. This is God warning Abimelech, telling Abimelech the same thing he tells Abraham what to do.
God just threatened him after he was lied to, and now he's threatening him again for believing the lie. Why are we going after a guy who did nothing wrong?
He's not threatening for believing the lie. He's threatening him that should he continue with his current trajectory, he will be punished. He's actually telling him the truth of the matter.
Relatively speaking. Early the next morning, Abimelech summoned all his officials, and when he told them all that had happened, they were very much afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham in and said, "What have you done to us? How have I wronged you that you have brought such great guilt upon me and my kingdom? You have done things to me that should never be done." And Abimelech asked Abraham, "What was your reason for doing this?"
Now, notice that all the officials were very afraid when they were told what Abimelech had done. Why were they afraid? Because they understood about the Almighty God and what he was capable of, because word was getting around in those days. Also notice that Abimelech did the honorable thing and brought his counsel in and told them everything. He didn't keep anything from them. He didn't act like he didn't do anything wrong. He told the truth. And then he called Abraham in and asked him, "Why have you done this thing?" Now Abraham's going to tell him why.
Yes, finally, some biblical accountability. I am here for this. But why were the servants
Are you now? Are you? Are you really?
afraid? It's not like Abimelech touched Sarah. It's not like he did anything to another man's wife.
Exactly. You see, now you see.
What is there to be worried about? Abraham replied, "I said to myself, there is surely no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister, the
See there? It's not a lie. Besides, she really is my sister. I didn't tell you a lie. I just told you part of the truth.
daughter of my father, though not of my mother, and she became my wife. And when God had me wander from my father's household, I said to her, this is how you can show your love to me. Everywhere we go, say of me, he is my brother."
And in that way, we will be able to work ourselves into a fortune.
Why'd you lie to me, Abraham? Because I thought you were all atheists.
Not a lie, and he did think that, and that he's mostly correct.
That's Christian morality for you. It's okay to lie as long as you do it to people considered evil. And we finally get some confirmation of biblical incest.
Not incest, not a lie. Sorry. It was only incest after Moses said that you shouldn't do that. Before that, it was just how you propagated your species.
Which no one seems to have a problem with, like, at all. Then Abimelech brought sheep and cattle and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham, and he returned Sarah, his wife, to him. And Abimelech said, "My land is before you. Live wherever you like." To Sarah, he said, "I am giving your brother 1,000 shekels of silver."
That's a lot, in case you didn't know.
This is to cover the offense against you before all who are with you. You are completely vindicated.
You are completely vindicated, which means neither Abraham nor Abimelech did anything wrong, and everyone is in agreement. Go do your thing and take this money with you when you go. Sounds like a pretty sweet deal to me.
What the hell? Everyone Abraham lies to repays him with livestock and slaves and
It's almost like he's blessed, isn't it?
money, and his sister wife, even though he's the bad guy. Then
Abraham's not the bad guy. He's a guy, for sure. He does some questionable things for today's standards, sure. I wouldn't sleep with my sister, half or not. But he didn't see any problem with it.
Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female slaves so they could have children again. For the Lord had kept all the women in Abimelech's household from conceiving because of Abraham's wife Sarah.
Because if he had slept with her, he didn't want Abimelech's seed entering Sarah. Because he made a promise to Abraham that Abraham would be a father and Sarah would be a mother of Abraham's child. So that's why that happened, if you're confused.
Why does Sarah's inability to have kids affect everyone in Abimelech's home?
Because God made a promise. And that's just them breaks.
It's not an infectious disease. I'm sure Abimelech's slaves loved knowing they could be impregnated now. That'll totally make their lives way better. And seriously, God had the power to make a woman able to have children, and he never told Sarah about it earlier?
Yes, he did. Why do you think they're on this journey right now? They're trying to get to the place where God told them to go to have the children. The first thing God did was tell them they were going to have a child.
Like when she was in her youthful 70s? If this chapter sounds familiar to you, that's because it's already recycled material. And we're only into the 20th chapter. The writers of the Bible were very, very lazy.
You have kids, right? Did you take your kids to school today? Did you do it yesterday? Did you do it the day before? So if you were writing a diary and you were writing down everything you did, would you consider that recycled material or just stuff that happens on a daily basis? The fact that Abraham did this same trick and it worked for him several times does not mean that it's recycled material. It just means that that's what he did. It's not recycled material. The characters are different, the places are different, the circumstances are different. But the same little deception seems to be working for Abraham and making him a very, very rich man. Now, I don't know why this guy seems to have so much trouble.
Genesis 21.
But we're going to get to the bottom of it eventually.
Abraham says goodbye to Ishmael, but gives him the worst parting gift ever. And guess who just got pregnant at the ripe age of 90? Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham.
So in this chapter, you admit that God promised Abraham and Sarah that they would have a child, and you admit that they did have it in the same year that you were just talking about a minute ago with Abimelech. But then you said that God never told her that she could have, that he had the power to make her have children. But he did, and you just admitted it. So I don't even have to do this. You're contradicting yourself.
In his old age, at the very time God had promised him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. The Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. That sentence is doing a lot of heavy lifting. What did God do exactly?
He opened her womb. Not what you're suggesting.
Did he work in mysterious ways? Did Sarah say his name a lot? Did he bring Abraham some Viagra? I mean, no one was suggesting this was a virgin birth.
No, they sure weren't. How do you think babies are made? Are we having a problem with the act of making babies now? Or who did it?
Maybe they had a holy trinity.
Haha, that's funny.
How come every time God helps a Bible character have a baby, it's a son?
Because men carry the inheritance. You moron.
Statistically unlikely. Why does the Bible hate math? At least Abraham thanked God by giving him more infant foreskin. God can never have enough baby penis parts. And that's just a normal thing associated with the Old Testament.
No, that's just a normal thing associated with Jews. It's not for everyone. It's a very clear dividing line between Jews and Gentiles. You understand? Those are God's chosen people. They are to have a peculiar way about them. They are to be different from everyone else in the world. Not everyone, just them.
Isaac, by the way, means he laughs.
Yes.
Which is the most appropriate reaction for everything we're reading.
I can't argue with that, but that does not make it not true.
Sarah said, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me.
Probably because a 90-year-old woman is suckling a child, and that's hilarious even back then.
And she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. Oh yeah, we're definitely laughing. With you, not so much. But
well, not you, but I think it's funny. I'm actually kind of glad being one of those descendants and all. You, on the other hand, as you fondly pointed out earlier, being a brown person, you're a descendant of the other one.
Definitely laughing. And yes, Abraham is 100 now, so he's definitely old. But just for context, remember that because of all that biblical genealogy we were exposed to earlier, we know that his great-great-great-great-grandfather Eber is still alive.
Isn't that wild?
So relatively speaking, Abraham is like an ancient millennial.
Wait. So now you're understanding that the age thing is because of a longer lifespan. But weren't you just complaining about that a few minutes ago? I don't understand. Do you get it or do you not get it? Because I think I've explained it pretty clearly, and you seem to agree with me here. Am I winning? I can't tell.
The child grew and was weaned, and on the day Isaac was weaned, Abraham held a great feast. But Sarah saw that the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to
That would be Ishmael.
Abraham was mocking, and she said to Abraham, get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac.
Now, I don't know what mocking means. I know what it means now, but I don't know what they were intending by it then. But it was severe enough that Sarah didn't want any more of it. Remember that Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham to bear him a child. She gave permission for this to happen. She also has already banished Hagar once before for her behavior. So this is a strike 2 or 3 in Hagar and her child to this family. I don't agree with what's coming next. I would never do what's coming next unless God told me to. However, this is what happens.
Is this a thing people do? Hold a giant party for your child on the exact day he stops breastfeeding?
Oh man, you should check out the Jews, man. They've got feasts for everything. They can't hardly get anything done because every other day there's another feast.
Didn't know that was a thing. Pretty sure the party should be for the mother in that case.
Why? No, why? Don't throw your woke garbage at me, because I don't care. In those days, a woman was a mother and a wife. That's it. In these days, a woman has a lot more autonomy and a lot more freedom. But in those days, that is how it was. So why are you acting like this is uncharacteristic of that nature? We're not talking about somebody that was born last week. We're talking about somebody that lived over 3,000 years ago in a world way different than this one. As a matter of fact, have you been back to your home country lately? Do you know how women are treated there? I think you should, sweep your own back porch before you go worrying about somebody else's, but that's just me.
What did Ishmael do? What did Ishmael say? He was apparently mocking Sarah's son Isaac, but we're never told how. Your mama's so old, she got her Bible autographed. Mocking each other is what kids do.
Yes, today. But just like the word fool means something different in those days, I imagine the word mocking was much more severe.
They tease each other. Calling for eternal banishment seems like a bit much. And what is with Sarah's jealousy again? She's banished Hagar before, too.
Doesn't sound like jealousy. It sounds like protective mother. But I don't know what the circumstances are because we're not told. We are told of the reaction. And judging by the reaction, I would say it was probably pretty severe. Probably jealousy on their part rather than the other way around. But I can't disagree with you. I don't like this situation any more than you do. But this is what happened.
If you don't like your slave, just release her. Let her be free. And let's pause and reflect on how Sarah just told her brother husband to abandon his son.
Number one, Hagar was willingly a servant. She was not a slave in that sense of the word. She chose to be there. She got great benefits for being there. She was taken care of very well for being there. Her being X'd out is pretty bad. She didn't want to be free. She wanted to stay there. So
I know married couples fight about a lot of things, but if you're telling your brother husband to kick out his child because you're no longer besties with his mother, who, by the way, is a slave whom you gave your brother husband permission to impregnate, then maybe divorce is not the worst option.
Now, I can't disagree with you. I think that's probably apropos. However, in those days, there was a thing known as a bastard. Look the word up. And what it means is a son without an illegitimate family, or a son without a legitimate father. I said illegitimate, I meant legitimate. This child, Ishmael, was a bastard. He had two separate mothers, and his father was the father of a family. That was one thing. Now, he didn't just kick them out, he disowned them. He bought their ransom by giving them food and water, and they left. So now Abraham only has one son, according to their ways. He doesn't have two sons anymore because he gave them up. He's gone. I don't like it, but that's the way it was.
The matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son. But God said to him, "Do not be so distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also."
Don't read over that. I will make the son of the slave a nation also. Islam is a pretty big nation. And the entire Middle East is related in some way to Ishmael or Isaac. That's a pretty big promise kept, if you ask me.
Because he is your offspring. Oh my God! God is telling Abraham to abandon his son. Tragic foreshadowing right there, because abandoning his children, forsaking them, if you will, when they need him the most, is sort of God's thing.
Before you go any further, I suggest you go read Psalms and pay close attention to what David says, which is 2,000 years before Christ was born. And in one of those Psalms, he says the phrase, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" And when Christ said it, he was teaching that this was the end of that prophecy, that this was the completion of that prophecy. He was not asking God why he forsook him. God did not forsake him. The earth trembled when he died. The dead walked the earth. The earth ripped open and went straight to the temple and rent the veil from top to bottom when he died. God was very much in attendance the day he died. So you're wrong about that all the way around. Pay attention.
Is anyone surprised that on a rather simple moral question, God found a way to be just hideous?
Oh, one other thing. God did not tell Abraham to abandon his child. God told Abraham that if he chose to do that, he would take care of them. He didn't offer any suggestion. He just said that if you do what you need to do, I will take care of the mother and the son and make them a nation also.
Wrong, but at least God offers a parting gift. If you abandon your son and your slave woman, God calls her a slave woman, then I'll take.
You called her a slave woman, and your fake little book called them a slave woman. Read the actual Bible.
Take care of them. Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water, and he gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy.
He could have sent him off empty-handed, but he didn't.
She went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba.
In a minute, he's going to tell you why would she go to the desert. They're in the desert. There's nowhere not desert to go.
Water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and sat down about a bowshot away, for she thought, I cannot watch the boy die. And as she sat there, she began to sob.
Now just try to put yourself in her position. They're in the desert. Obviously, they're hot, thirsty, and hungry. And rather than push on, rather than trust God, rather than anything, they lay down and give up. They were within eye view of a well of water and didn't even know it. They had walked so far that they come upon a well because that's what God led them to. Just happens to be just as far as they could go, but not too far. They didn't go so far that they died. They went as far as they could go, and then there was a well. Do you understand? God's not going to do it for you, but he will provide what you need. He provides what I need on a daily basis, and I can vouch for it. I can tell you for a fact that when I need something, it shows up. I don't have to ask but once. Sometimes I get nervous and ask more than once, but I don't have to ask but once. He knows my needs. I'll tell you a story about that if you like. A while back, I was pretty destitute, out of money, had nothing, no food, no cigarettes, no drinks, and was wondering where my next dollar was going to come from. This was before I started the podcast, by the way. And I decided to take a walk about 4 o'clock in the morning, just get some fresh air and think about things. And, you know, just, I'm a nighttime walker. That's what I like. So I decided to walk. And I went outside, and I decided to not go the way that I would normally go. I turned and went the opposite direction. Why? I don't know. I just did. I walked about 100 yards and stopped and looked down, and there was a $20 bill at my feet in the middle of the night on a road where no people were, on a road that no people are hardly ever on. I walked straight to a $20 bill. It was enough to get me through the night and through the next couple of days, and I moved on. I was very thankful of that. But that's just an example of the many, 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 many things that God does in my favor. So you need to be aware of that. If you put your trust in God, He will take care of you.
So Abraham, the crappy daddy, gave some food and water to his slave and then got rid of her and his son. He didn't even give her some diapers or a note that says, Ishmael, here's how to find me when you're older.
There was no such thing as diapers in those days. You don't want to know how they clean babies. And as far as the thing, Ishmael knows who his father was.
No mementos, just food and water that'll be gone in minutes. With an attitude like that, you can just tell the only contact he's ever gonna have with Ishmael is when he sends him $5 every year on his birthday.
They didn't have dollars in those days either.
And what the hell is Hagar doing? My water is gone. I guess the boy has to die now. Maybe you should ration better. Maybe you should keep walking and look for a river. Or
maybe you should take your own advice and stop worrying about what people are doing so much. Yes, they should have pushed further. They were at a well, and they laid down to die. Now, here's another thing that's coming up. He's going to refer to the boy as a baby, because at one time he was a baby in the Bible. The Bible never says he's a baby. He calls him a boy. Do boys not cry? Do 14-year-olds not have mothers that love them?
an oasis. Maybe you shouldn't have wandered into a desert. I'm hardly Father of the Year, but if I'm thirsty and there's nothing in the house, I promise you my first thought would not be, son, it was nice knowing you. Happy last birthday.
Oddly enough, it was her first thought, though. So you're better than she is. Congratulations. Maybe that's why Ishmael is in the situation he's in. You thought about that? Maybe that's genetic, that lack of ability, that lack of desire, that lack of control. Maybe that's genetic. Maybe there's a such thing as people who were born to succeed and people who were born to fail. And maybe that comes from a certain mixing of DNA a little while back in the Bible, in the first pages of this book, when the devil put his seed in a woman that didn't belong there. Maybe that's where it comes from. Have you considered that? No, you haven't, because you haven't put any thought in the actual facts of this book and what it's telling you and why it's telling you. Ishmael is not a good person. His mother was not a good person. They are of the lineage of the devil.
There's a weird contradiction we need to discuss too. How old is Ishmael? Because in
14.
Genesis 17, it said Abraham circumcised Ishmael when he was 13 and Abraham was 99. Well, now Abraham is 100, so Ishmael must be about 14, right?
Yeah. What's the problem? Because he cried? Or because his mother put him under a bush? I did what I was told when I was 14.
But now you're telling me his mother left him under a shrub to die?
Yep.
I don't think the Bible knows if this guy's an infant or a teenager.
You ever seen anybody that was thirsting to death? You think they're up running around?
God heard the boy crying, And the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven.
Now, this next line here is going to make you think that God isn't doing the talking, that he sent an angel to do his heavy lifting. But you need to understand that God never does the talking. God doesn't have a voice that we can hear with our ears. Every time God's voice is heard, it is Gabriel the archangel doing the talking. Every time. Even in the burning bush. Even when from heaven the words came, "Behold, this is my son in whom I am well pleased." That was Gabriel's voice, not God's voice. God doesn't have a voice.
And said to her, "What is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation." Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink.
Now, was the angel saying, "I will make the boy a nation," or was he reporting that God said, "I will make the boy a nation"? Because it sounds like the angel said that. Well, he did, because he's the voice of God. He speaks for God. He is the press secretary of God. He's Kaylee McAnany.
God was with the boy as he grew up. He lived in the desert and became an archer. While he was living in the desert of Paran, his mother got a wife for him from Egypt.
Which is customary in those days. You didn't meet a wife, you got one. Because everybody wanted to be betrothed to somebody. It kind of should still be that way, but free will and all.
So God heard the boy crying and poofed a well into existence.
No, they walked until they found a well, but didn't see it at first. It was already there. They just didn't see it.
Did God not do that before she was ready to sacrifice the baby?
He did. They drank. They were replenished, and they survived. So, just because it was later than you would have liked it doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
Why wait until the last second? Tragic foreshadowing. Unless, of course, Hagar found the well by herself, since it was right there, and God's just taking the credit. God would totally take the credit.
He has every right to. This is his creation, which means he owns it, which means he sets the rules of it, which means you are subordinate to it. And so am I.
And what's up with the passage of time there? Within a couple of sentences, we go from a nearly dead infant / teenager child to a guy who shoots things with a bow and arrow to a guy marrying someone his mother bought for him. I don't like wearing clothes my mother buys for me, but this guy's gonna marry someone his mommy bought at the market?
The Bible doesn't say that she bought her. It says that she got her. Maybe she bartered for her. Maybe she just asked her, "Hey, would you like to marry somebody that'll work hard for you?"
How long was she on the shelf? Even as a brown person, I'm gonna say, I'm not sure how that arranged marriage is gonna work out.
I'm gonna say that I'm not sure how your soul eternity is gonna work out.
I think even the Bible's writers know this storyline is not going so well, so they're gonna switch gears completely now. At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, said to Abraham, "God is with you in everything you do. Now swear to me here before God that you will not deal falsely with me or my children or my descendants."
Now, why would he be doing that? When he met Abraham, he was just a traveler passing in the night. And now he's asking Abraham to play fair with him. Why would he be doing that? Could it be because Abraham was growing by leaps and bounds and Abimelech could see that very, very soon Abraham will overtake him in power? Right now he has the upper hand, but it won't be that way forever. He knows that God has blessed Abraham. He knows that God has blessed him for not killing Abraham or taking his wife. So maybe he's hedging his bets. Maybe he sees the writing on the wall and decides, hey, maybe I better get in good with this Abraham character before he's the king.
Show to me and the country where you now reside as a foreigner the same kindness I have shown to you. Why is Abimelech in this story? Last time we saw him, he was angry at Abraham for lying to him, then shooed him away with gifts. Now,
you don't give people gifts when you're angry with them. That wasn't anger, that was righteous indignation. And by the way, he got over it because he was blessed for what he did. Now, why is Abimelech in this story? Because that's where Abraham is right now. And he'll stay there.
He's back and he wants some favors? I guess we should give him credit, though. Abimelech learned his lesson, and he's like, you're not lying to me again. Not while God is watching.
Abimelech never said that. You're paraphrasing and you're adding to the Bible. Read the last verse in the Bible and know that you should not do that, ever.
But okay, they've made a pact. Abraham nearly killed Abimelech last time by letting Abimelech have his way with Abraham's sister-wife Sarah.
He never got anywhere close to killing Abraham. And God never got anywhere close to killing Abimelech.
But there's a truce now. They've exchanged goods and land, and Abimelech says, let's be allies and you can live in my kingdom, Gerar. They're buddies now. The only thing that can ruin this is a petty fight.
They're buddies now because that's a sound business choice to make.
Abraham said, I swear it. Then Abraham complained to Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized. But Abimelech said, I don't know who has done this. You did not tell me, and I heard about it only today.
So who's doing the lying here, Mr. Atheist? Because servants don't do things without being told to do them.
They're fighting again over the ownership of a well. So much for that, friend.
The rightful ownership of a well. Abraham built the well. It's his well.
Abimelech is saying, well? What well? I don't know about a well. This better not be another lie. So
sounds like something a liar would say.
Abraham brought sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a treaty. Abraham set apart 7 ewe lambs from the flock, and Abimelech asked Abraham, what is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs you have set apart by themselves? He replied, accept these 7 lambs from my hand as a witness that I dug this well. So that place was called Beersheba, because the 2 men swore an oath there.
Now, not only did Abraham build the well and dig it with his own hands, but then he also paid for it. So it's his. Doesn't belong to Abimelech, though it is in Abimelech's land. It is Abraham's well. It is to this day. And there it is. You can go find it. That well still exists. There's a church built over top of it, but it's there. And to this day, it belongs to Abraham and his descendants.
Here are some baby lambs. You love baby lambs. Now tell the world I made this well. I thought the place was already called Beersheba. Unless they're naming it now and the earlier section was an anachronism.
Yes. You see, it's a book that was intended to be read as a handbook to explain history and to give you a direction in life. Which means the authors told the story and then told the events of the story. And as that place was named Beersheba because of the oath taken there by the 2 men, so the author said so. Yes, when it was written, the place was already called Beersheba, or Beersheba. But, you see, that's how a narrative works.
Because you know what would make the Bible easier to understand? Going out of chronological order. Whatever the case, Beersheba means well of the oath.
For the last time, the Bible is not a chronological book, and I doubt that's the last time. But I'll tell you again, it's not chronological. It goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It tells its story, then it proves its story, then it repeats the story. This is called a trinity. 3 things. It repeats itself 3 times so that you know it's the truth. From 3 different sources, from 3 different angles, same story.
I didn't realize that phrase needed a word, but there you go. After the treaty had been made at Beersheba, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, returned to the land of the Philistines.
Real quick before we go any further, That struck me as odd that you just said that. I didn't realize that that phrase needed a word, but there you go. That's what you said, right? Could you utter to me a phrase that does not need a word? Can anyone? Can you utter a phrase that doesn't use words? You cannot. So if you didn't realize it, that was a very amateur mistake on your behalf. I'm just saying.
Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there he called on the name of the Lord, the eternal God. And Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines for a long time.
Don't read over that. Abraham set down roots. He planted trees. He's going to live there for the rest of his life, on the land he purchased by the well he dug. And then he called on the name of the eternal God. You see, Abraham spent his life in service. Who do you serve? Who do you call master? Do you fare as good as Abraham did? Maybe his service is why he fared so well.
The land of the Philistines? That's weird, since the Philistines don't arrive here for another 800 years or so.
True, but the land is still full of those people who will eventually become Philistines. And since this was written several hundred years after the fact, it would be pertinent for the reader to know which lands he's referring to. And as you can tell, the Philistines are still there today. Saying in the land of the Philistines would give you an exact idea of where he was talking about. That's the nature of narratives.
More anachronisms. I wonder if that tree in Beersheba is the same as the shrub Ishmael nearly died under.
No, because Abraham planted that tree in Beersheba, and the shrub was already planted.
If so, this chapter's time warps are getting very confusing. The Bible turned into an episode of Lost. We should have started from the middle and then looped back around to the beginning.
I did. I started in Matthew.
Then this would have made a little more sense. But again, that's what happens when you don't hire editors. So what can we take from this chapter?
What makes you think the Bible didn't have editors? Read the Bible. Every book, almost every book, starts with, and these are the days of, or this is the generation of, or whatever. That's telling you who the editor is. And the writer.
God has given Sarah a baby boy. God has given Abraham a baby well. Everyone is happy. Good thing God would never ask Abraham to do anything evil to Isaac.
Yeah. Why would you think that what God is about to ask Abraham would be evil?
Genesis 22. God proves he is the least moral person in the entire Bible by playing a weird loyalty game with Abraham that involves nearly murdering his son Isaac.
Number one, it's a sacrifice. Number two, the Bible is not a book of morality. And number three, what God asks Abraham to do is a test. He passes the test.
Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah."
Now, why did he say your son, your only son, whom you love? Because his other son was given up. He doesn't have him anymore, which means he doesn't have that son anymore. So he has only one son at this point, and he loves him, obviously more than the other one because he gave the other one up.
"Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you."
God is asking Abraham to take his only begotten son and sacrifice him for God. In Genesis, the first book of the Bible. Are you with me? Do you understand that in Genesis, in the first book of the Bible, in the beginning of the world, shortly after the happenings of the Garden of Eden, a few hundred years, God is already planning Jesus back then. He's thinking about it. He's mulling it over in his head. He's deciding what he has to do to save mankind. And when he comes upon the idea of sacrificing his son Jesus, who would be the only person he could sacrifice that would cover all mankind's sins, he asks Abraham if he would do it. After all, if I'm going to sacrifice my only begotten son for the whole of mankind, it would be nice to know that they would be willing to do the same for me. Abraham does not disappoint.
Holy hell! On a whim, God decides to test Abraham's faith by telling him to murder his only son.
Sacrifice, not murder.
What sort of monster is God? Also, only son? What happened to Ishmael?
He was given away.
Abraham is also his father. Isaac is actually the second son. But I guess God doesn't know how to count to 2. Goes straight from 1 to Trinity. Why does Abraham need to be tested anyway? He's done
I've answered all of those questions, so I will refrain.
everything God has wanted him to do, including lying about his sister wife. At least we can expect Abraham to put up some sort of fight here, right? The next verse is just Abraham saying, no!
Note to self, putting up a fight when God tells you to do something is the wrong thing to do. Take that note and apply it.
Right? Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." No pushback from Abraham at all. Think of all the things he could have said. Surely you're joking, God. I can't do that, God. I can't obey a cruel tyrant, God. God, Sarah didn't have a kid until she was 90, and this is what you're doing with him? I thought we were pro-life, God. He didn't say anything.
I agree with you. Again, I am a father, and I would give my own life in an instant to save my children. And I don't know if I could follow out that order. But as you realize that the Bible doesn't tell you every detail of every second of every day of a person's life, you have no idea what Abraham struggled with before doing this. You have no idea what kind of arguments he had with God. You only know the story, which is this is what occurred. You don't know all of the little details. So you can't place that kind of judgment on somebody when you don't know everything. What you do know is that Abraham eventually complied and did what God told him to do, because that's what a servant does. He does what his master bids him to do, period. And if he's a good servant, he does it well. This is something you should probably invest in learning. Who do you serve? Atheist, who claims to serve no one. What are you doing this for?
Abraham put up a fight when God was going to kill every person in Sodom. Remember Abraham negotiating that number down?
Yes.
But now we're talking about murdering his son.
Sacrificing, not murdering. Look up the word murder. You'll find out that it's one of several words. The Bible says, "Thou shalt not kill." Kill is criminal homicide. It's fainéants in the Greek. Murder is not the same word as kill. Murder in the 3rd degree is not the same word as murder. Murder in the 2nd degree is not the same word. And sacrifice is not the same word as murder. They have different meanings. Words mean things. Get a Strong's Concordance and a Green's Interlinear and go to town, buddy. You'll learn lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of things.
And Abraham's reaction is like, yeah, all right, let me grab my stabbing knife. It takes an evil God to suggest doing this.
Does it now? Have you godded much? Do you know what it takes to be a god? You're telling me what God thinks? You're being an arrogant ass. You don't know what God needed or wanted. I can tell you what he was doing because I can read between the lines. He was seeing if mankind was even worthy of giving the gift of his son, Jesus Christ. How do you find that out? A good leader never asks his men to do anything he would not do himself. And this is proof positive of that same sentiment.
And it takes an awful father to agree to do this. Would you have done this? If the answer is no, you're more moral than the Christian God.
Please do, Kevin, please do explain the difference between kill and murder and sacrifice. Something quick ought to do. But if I'm wrong, since you are a lawyer, please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm a bit of a lawyer myself. I've had to be. I'll wait. This is important. First real drag off of this cigarette I've had. I've lit 4 of them and watched them burn. All right. While I'm waiting, I'll go through a little bit more of this, get us on towards the end.
How the hell did Christians ever become the family values people? Look at their values.
Can't argue with you. There's some weird things going on among Christendom. But I would like to explain to you that there's Catholicism, which is a Roman Catholic sort of thing. But then there's the people who followed Jesus, which were his disciples, who were told mockingly that they were Christians, people of Christ, because they followed Jesus. And then later, they started taking those Roman Catholics and rebaptizing them as Christians. Then they were called Anabaptists, which means rebaptizers. And then later on in history, the Anna was dropped and they were just called Baptists. Well, then later on, they had a breaking off and a disagreement, and then they formed the Protestants. So you had the Baptists, the Protestants, and the Catholics. But all along, from day one, there have been people who follow Christ. Those are Christians. Catholics are not Christians. Protestants are not Christians. Methodists are not Christians. Mormons are not Christians. On and on and on and on. What do you say, Kev? Okay. Murder is the intentional killing of someone where you plan it or you lay in wait. Second-degree murder is when it is done recklessly, where when crime of passion happens. Like you get a little furious and get carried away and some shit happens you didn't mean. Or you hit somebody with your car. Sacrifice is killing with a legal reason that justifies the killing. That's very important to understand. In the Bible, even a first-degree murder was allowed to live freely, but only in certain cities. That's correct. Because there's a thing called a soldier. And a soldier who goes out and fights a war is not guilty of murder because he's doing what he's told by his higher up. He's following out an order. It is not his desire to kill someone. He's in a battle. Battles are sanctified. If God tells you to do it. There are plenty of battles in the Bible that God did not tell them to do, and they had their asses handed to them. But every time God said to do it, they won. Thanks, Kev. I appreciate that. Thanks for the backup.
I know this isn't relevant, but what lie do you think Abraham used to lure Isaac to his death?
None. I imagine he told him all the way there what was going on.
"Hey, only son, I have a present for you. It's in the middle of nowhere. What should you pack? Oh, the usual. Matches, a butcher knife." Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and
Keep in mind that Isaac is a follower of God too. Isaac also is not fighting this decision, which means he was in agreement with it.
placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" "Oh, you poor deluded Isaac.
This would be where the conversation starts, by the way.
You are so close to figuring it out. Did he not realize there was no lamb when they got on the donkey?
Obviously not.
Did he not realize he's the lamb? God, I wish the Bible had photos because I really want to see Isaac's face in just a moment. What an amazing GIF that would be.
The Bible does have photos. They're not accurate, but there are photos in the Bible. Some of them, anyway.
Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went on together.
Now, this next point he makes, I don't think he even realizes what gravity he's suggesting here. But listen very carefully to the next thing he says, because it's more accurate than you could possibly know. Not only for Abraham, but for God as well.
That is a maniacal serial killer answer right there. Look at that response. God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. Change the comma and it still makes sense. God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son.
And there is the entire reason for this event. Because God himself will provide the sacrifice, his son. Period. Let that sink in. Yeah, well, I'm running and gunning. I don't get everything right, but I got the gist of it. And Abraham passes the test. Yes.
They reached the place God had told him about. Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it.
I was hoping you didn't notice that. I tried to skate past that one. I spoke before I thought.
He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar, on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. How do we not hear from Isaac at this moment? Dad, why are we building this altar? Dad, why are you placing me on this altar? Dad, why are you surrounding me with wood on this altar? Dad, why do you have that creepy glazed look over your eyes? Dad, why are you bringing that knife down in a stabbing motion toward me? Dad, am I the lamb? It's kind of incredible that Abraham chopping off the foreskins of hundreds of men is somehow not the worst thing he's done with a knife.
That is kind of amazing. I have to agree with you again. I'm telling you, I sympathize with what you're going through. I struggled with this one myself, but I had to come to the realization of why it was happening. God never intended for Abraham to kill Isaac. He just wanted to know that he would. I can see this now. It takes a lot of growth and a lot of understanding to come to this position, but trust me when I tell you, it was never an intent to hurt Isaac. Remember, God promised Abraham that through Isaac there would be a nation. Can't do that if he's dead as a child. So it was never an intent to kill Isaac. But he had to know that Abraham would be willing to go through the same thing he was going to go through later.
But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham!" "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God because you have not withheld from me your son."
You see, there it is right there. Now I know you fear God because you have not withheld your only son from me.
Your only son. Hats off to that angel for nailing his cue. He couldn't be a second late, and he wasn't. Why isn't God here? Leave it to an evil cartoon villain to plot out a murder, then disappear and let a henchman take over.
Again, I tell you, that is God speaking. That's Gabriel, the archangel, speaking for God. God is there. He's been there the whole time. He's always there. He's there right now. He's here right now. That's the nature of God. God is outside of time, space, and matter. He can see through it. He can see around it. He can see all of it at once. You cannot. He can.
Over. Maybe that was a way for God to have an out. You know, if the angel was late and Isaac died, God could be like, you were supposed to stop him. Ah, well, not my fault. My hands are clean.
Or maybe that's just a way for you to misunderstand God's intentions, because it is easy. You know, God chose the wise to confound as fools, and he chose fools to confound the wise.
What's with Abraham's completely nonchalant response? Stab, stab, stab. Here I am. What's up? Why did it take the actual stabbing motion for the angel to realize Abraham feared God?
I don't know. At what point would you stop something that you intended to occur so that you could see a person was willing to do it? Maybe because before the stabbing motion, he could have backed out. Maybe that was the point where God knew that if he didn't stop it, Isaac was going to die there.
Wasn't it enough that when God told him to commit murder, he didn't even ask questions?
Sacrifice, not murder. It's a legal transaction. It is permissible because it is legal according to that law.
Couldn't the angel figure it out when Abraham was placing the wood on the altar? I can't believe the Bible doesn't give us Isaac's reaction here. There's no, oh thank God, or please save me, this man is insane.
All of which I'm sure is true, by the way.
Also, how come no one ever talks about how Isaac must be traumatized from all this? How much did he have to pay in therapy bills for the rest of his life?
No therapy in those days, but I can tell you, the reason people don't talk about it is because it's a very difficult subject, and it's very hard for most people to wrap their heads around that concept, and most people avoid it like the plague because they don't want to have to delve into what seriousness that means. It is no small thing for a father to kill his son. That's not a small thing. That is the biggest, most heart-wrenching thing I can imagine. I tremble just thinking about it. I can't imagine what Abraham must have went through to come to that conclusion for the sake of God. You're not even trying to imagine it. You're just laying blame. But you don't seem to understand what's at stake here. We're talking about the whole civilization of the earth from start to finish, and the afterlife. Everything that comes after this is laying on that altar with Isaac. If Abraham doesn't do it, there's a chance God doesn't do it. You understand? If Abraham backs out, maybe God says, well, wow, maybe I can't kill my son either. What would this world be if Jesus Christ hadn't have died on that cross? If you were truly responsible for all of your sins, I want you to just consider that for a moment. If everything you've done in your life, the things that you would never speak to your mother, you know what I'm talking about. If everything you've done, you actually had to pay for, what would your life be like? What would be going through your mind? Would you be terrified every second of every day, just knowing that wrath was right around the corner and that one day you would succumb to it? That's the most horrible thing I can imagine. And thank God Jesus died on that cross. And he did it willingly, so that you didn't have to pay for all those little sins.
Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering.
No doubt it was blameless and blemishless.
Instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." Well, that took a weird turn. Was Abraham trying to convince his only son a bit too late that this was really an animal sacrifice?
No. You see, when God realized that Abraham was serious and he was going to comply with God's wishes no matter the cost, then God provided a sacrifice for them so that he didn't have to. And he did it again not too long after that. Only this time, it was for all sin and all people. That time, it was just for Abraham and Isaac.
Oh, you thought I was gonna murder you? No. Oh, look, a ram! Stab. I'm still in shock by the bloodlust of these people.
You would be. You are a vegan, right?
Abraham spared his child, but he's here and he has a knife. Gotta kill something. What, are we all just supposed to go home? In some translations, Abraham named the place Jehovah Jireh. And that's a phrase you might want to know because, among other things, it's referenced in a Frank Ocean song.
Not relevant.
Though calling that place something that translates to the Lord will provide is still not as accurate as just calling it Stabby Town. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son.
Here comes the promise. This is the covenant. This is the inheritance that all of Abraham's descendants are privy to.
Your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me.
Now, let that sink in. That's the price of a son.
Why does God need to keep reminding Abraham about all the descendants he's gonna have?
Probably because he's asking a lot of Abraham. To whom much is given, much is required.
It's messed up that Abraham had to almost sacrifice one of his sons in order to get the other billion.
You're right. But it's really messed up that God had to actually sacrifice his. You understand the difference? One almost did. The other did. Imagine how God felt about that.
God already promised this stuff. Abraham shouldn't have needed to almost kill his son to get something God already told him he would get.
Maybe he shouldn't have, but he did, because that's what was required of him at the time.
Then Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off together for Beersheba, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. Right, the servants, they were here the whole time.
Well, they were down the mountain. They weren't there. They were down waiting. But yeah.
I almost forgot. And what were they doing during the almost stabbing? Nothing. They just sat back and did nothing.
What part of servants don't you understand? They don't have the power to do anything. They're their servants. They do what they're told, not what they want to do.
Preventing a murder? Off the clock, no thank you. In any case, you know what would make this all better now? Some apologies from God and Abraham.
No apology necessary. God gave his only begotten son on the cross for what Abraham did. That's a pretty impressive apology if you ask me.
Or a heart-to-heart between father and his only son.
What makes you think that that didn't occur? I'm sure they had a lot to talk about after that event.
Instead, we're gonna get a random genealogy for no reason. Sometime later,
not for no reason, you're gonna learn about a female in this lineage who is very important.
Abraham was told, Milcah is also a mother. She has borne sons to your brother Nahor. Uz, the firstborn. Buz, his brother. Kemuel, the father of Aram. Chesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. Milcah bore these 8 sons to Abraham's brother Nahor. His concubine, whose name was Reumah, also had sons, Teba, Gaham, Thehush, and Maacah. Wait, there are brothers named Uz and Buz? How did I not know this until now?
Because you haven't read the Bible until now.
Also, you have to enjoy how Nahor apparently decided to have 8 kids before letting Abraham know he's an uncle. What was the point of that? Just one reason. This is the first genealogy in which we finally hear the name of a woman, Rebecca.
Really? What about Milcah and Nahor and the other girl, Rayan or whatever her name was? I can't remember what it was now. Scroll back and read it. There's 3 women mentioned before Rebecca. She's not the first. What about Sarah? What about all the genealogies back in the first part of the Bible that talked about several women? This is not the first. You're mistaken.
That's like Chekhov's gun. You know she's going to be important down the road.
Yes, all people that are mentioned in the Bible are important down the road. That's why they're mentioned in the Bible. It's a narrative. It's telling a story from start to finish. Every person that has a name goes on to be important in some fashion. The people that don't have names are just the people around the story that's happening.
And I guess we should be excited that Nahor's concubine had babies too.
Yeah.
I'm sure his wife is thrilled. So the moral of the story here is that if you hear a voice in your head telling you to murder your child, don't bother seeing a psychiatrist. That's just God telling you he loves you and you must obey. And somehow those are Christian values.
If you hear God tell you anything in your head, first, make sure it's God talking to you. And second, you better do it. Obey. Absolutely. Regardless of what he asks you to do. If it's God. I doubt it would be God because God makes it known when he's doing the talking. And it's not a voice in your head. It's a voice that you hear. So, I don't know what to tell you. You're just incorrect. If you're just now joining us, please like, subscribe, and share. Hit the notification bell so that you get notifications when I'm going to be on. Follow the links in the description below. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. Cuss me out or challenge me or challenge yourself. I don't care. Say something. If you would like to help this ministry, if we've helped you in some way and you'd like to keep doing it, go to paypal.me/JakeJohnsonBand. Every little bit helps. It's a tax write-off, and it keeps us afloat. So it's greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. And with that, I will take any questions you may have about the 3 videos we just watched and the debauchery therein. Kevin, I appreciate the legal help there, buddy. It meant a lot, and it backed up my point, so that's a wonderful thing. I also appreciate you calling me out on my flub there, but I was running and gunning. Like I said, it ain't coming from me. I'm just letting it come out. Whatever comes into my brain comes out. So, yes, obey God always. You get nothing but good out of obeying God. And if you obey God, if you allow yourself to be in service of him, he will provide for you everything you need. He may not give you everything you want, but you'll have everything you need. Always. I'm living proof of that. Thank you, sir. What do you guys think? How'd you like that? You think I was sufficient in my tear down of the atheist? Think I won that round? I think I did all right. Except for claiming that Isaac knew what he was doing. I apologize about that. He did get told when he was there, not when he was on the way. But you can't be 100% all the time. I'm trying to be, though. 99% is pretty good, though. Might have to get you to come on the podcast and do legal interpretations. Because when we get into numbers and kings and things like that, when we get into the Game of Thrones section of the Bible, it might come in handy. It makes you mad every week, yeah. He does me too, kind. I get a little hot under the collar occasionally. God is always good. Yes, He is. We are unable to understand His ways. Some stuff in the Old Testament is hard to get, and I'm doing my level best to lay it out in a way you can understand. And it is hard. But that's what I'm in service to do. And because I serve, God will make sure that I have everything I need always. And He'll do the same for you. And anyone else who accepts Him as their Father. But that's very important. You see, remember back a little while ago when I was talking to about when the followers of Christ got split up, and then there were some that were called the Anabaptists, the rebaptizers. The reason they did that is because Catholics baptize their babies at birth, and that's just taking a bath. That doesn't mean anything. The word baptism means to do an acknowledgement in public of your own free will that you are a follower of Christ. Babies don't have the choice. They don't have the say-so or the understanding to decide to be baptized, which is why they felt the need to rebaptize the Catholics. I never understood why God thought David was a man after His own heart, because he was a musician. Pay attention. David made Abraham look like a choir boy. Did I meant 100%? Yes, you fished fabulously. I'm sure that's not what you meant. I'll let it go. Apparently, I fished fabulously. I aim to please everybody. Yeah, this guy, he gets me a little agitated, especially when he gets sarcastic about God. You're not supposed to do that. You're here. That's amazing. I'm here too. What'd you say, Darlene? You having a good time? I'm having a good time. Tomorrow is going to be a little dicey. I'm going to get it done, but I have to go elsewhere tomorrow, so I may be getting it done, on my laptop in a different location. So I have to leave my studio for a little while. But we're getting there. Did what? Excellent. I would gladly stop it if I knew what you were referring to. I know what you meant when you wrote FIS. I was joking. It's just funny, that's all. I've learned to read computerese. Where are we going to eat? I don't know. Why are you asking me? Eat at the Mexican restaurant. Ooh. What do they serve at Gators? What kind of restaurant is that? A restaurant named Gators in Florida is suspect, in my opinion. Could be eating actual gators. I try to do it. I'm not much of a comedian, but I make an attempt. Y'all will be pleased to know that my voice is about 80% back. I actually did some singing the last 2 weeks. And I've got a show coming up on the 14th. And it looks like I'm going to be able to do it. Well, thank you. I'm very grateful that I make you laugh. I want this to be fun, but informative. And it's very hard to make the Bible fun. It's like work every time you open it up. But it's good work. It's work that'll build your soul, build your future. Sports update. The Dolphins beat the Cardinals. Tampa Bucks down by 28. Go Bucks! That's great, Jake. Thank you. I'm happy about it. You know, you can't shake your moneymaker if your moneymaker won't shake. So, I'm very grateful that my voice is coming back. It's a bad position to be in when you're a professional orator. And I speak for a living. So I like to have my voice as it cracks. I knew if I waited long enough, though, I'd heal. Just sports bar food like wings and burgers, etc. They have gator tail, too. Ah, see, I knew it. I knew it. You can't have a bar in Florida named Gators and not serve gator. They probably got eel, too, and turtles and everything else. If you look in the back, probably ain't on the menu, but I bet you can get it, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I lived in Florida for a while. I know. Probably got snails and iguanas and pythons. Seems to be a problem there. Go to Miami. That place is getting eat up by them big snails. They come from underground and they just soften the ground up and everything starts falling. It's bad news. Bad for property value. And apparently, enough people in Florida have had ball pythons as pets and let them go that it's now a problem, and the pythons are eating up the indigenous habitat, like rabbits and such. There's no real big game in Florida. There's some deer, but not very many. And all the little game is getting eaten up by the pythons because they breed fast. And the Everglades is having a serious issue with that right now. I try to keep up on Florida, the meth capital of the world, aside from Arizona. Which is the very reason I don't live in Florida, if you know what I'm saying. I made that decision New Year's Eve, 1996. Sorry. 1996. New Year's Eve. It's turning into 1997. You remember that? I was sleeping on your couch. Slept for 3 days. I know you had to think there was something wrong. Y'all had the fireworks. I slept on the couch. You think I don't remember that, but I remember it. And then I got my dog and my garbage bag full of clothes and got in my green pickup truck and drove to Georgia the next day, where I slept for 3 more days in the top of a barn in a loft on the ground. That's amazing. I didn't have a drug problem either. I loved it. It's the only thing that ever made me feel normal. Only problem is it has a cost. It's not free. And I mean that in the literal sense and in the metaphoric sense. And when I got tired of paying that cost, I had to leave because I knew that I would not stop doing that if I stayed. You didn't know you were having a problem with drugs? Well, I hid it well. But you knew I slept on your couch for 3 days. Because I was coming down and I was crashing hard. I needed a safe place to rest. And so I did. I came to you. Pick up sticks. Yep. I didn't know you didn't know that. I thought you knew that. How did I get started on drugs? Well, I put my face in it. It's pretty simple. I was offered it. I took it. And I liked it. So I kept doing it. And I did it for about 3 years. Hard as I could go. Maybe 4 years. I had a lawn business in Florida at the time. I was making a lot of money. And I was spending a lot of money. And when I ended that career, I had zero money. Yes, she did. I don't know if she knew about it at the time, but she knew about it afterwards because I told her. You see, I've told my mother everything. That's one thing I live my life by. I would never do anything I'd be ashamed to tell my mother. That's good advice, by the way. If you're listening to this, don't ever do anything that you wouldn't tell your mother. If you can't own up to it, you shouldn't be doing it. You see, there is a couple of things in my life that I'm guilty about. I feel guilty over. But they're not things that I did. They're things that other people did and I have to suffer the consequences for. But as far as things that I've done, I have no guilt. The reason I have no guilt, 96, it was New Year's Eve going into 97, so it was still 96 when I got there. It was 97 when I left. Yeah. The reason I got there to having no guilt is because not only have I been honest about everything I've ever done, but I've repented for it. So I have done some bad things, but I'm not guilty of them anymore because I repented. Well, now you know, and knowing is half the battle. But you understand, and it's important for me that you understand this. It was not a problem. I was never hooked on drugs. I did it because I wanted to. I enjoyed it. In a world of pain and in a world of agony, which I live in on a daily basis, it was a relief. It was a thing that allowed my brain to function at 100%, or so I thought, and my body to function at about 90%, or so I thought. So I wanted to do it. But like I said, it has a cost, and you can't pay that cost forever. Oh, dang gum. I had no idea. Well, most people didn't. I mean, I carry it very well. Most people don't know half the things I do. Because I look like this regardless of what I do. Good for you, Jake. Thank you. Don't be proud of me. I'd do it again in a minute. It is not strength. It is just circumstance. I'm 25 years older than I was then, and in a lot more pain and a lot more agony. So if I could find a way out of that, I would take it. It definitely has a cost. Yes, it does. And that's not a cost I was willing to keep paying. So I removed myself from the equation. Took myself to Georgia where I knew I couldn't find anything. I was in the middle of nowhere. And that's where I stayed for the next 5 years until I felt strong enough to move on out into the world. Why do I say what? That I would do it again in a minute? Because I'm being honest with you. That's not something you get most of the time in this world, so I understand your shock, but I'm honest. To a fault. Almost brutally honest. Almost too honest. Matter of fact, most people get mad at me because of my honesty. That's okay. Yeah, I'd do it again in a minute. That's the truth. I'm not doing it, so we're good. But there's no barrier to me doing it. I don't have a mama. She's not going to tell me no. I have nothing to lose. So, you know, the only thing that your strength comes from is you. You can blame other things on it, but ultimately it's you. You have to find the strength to be good, to be just. It's not always the easy path. Sometimes it's easier to be bad or to be judgeable. Well, I haven't in many. Say something if I'm here. Did I lose you? I think I lost connection. I think I'm back. You have an aunt that will tell you no. You tell me no then. But it was my decision to start. It was my decision to stop. And it's my decision that I haven't started back. So. Thank you. I accept. Have no fear. I'm a much wiser and much stronger person than I was in those days. I think so. That's why I made it. I ask you, and I'm being serious. You tell me. Would you rather be taught by a person who has never experienced a thing, who's lived a virgin life, who doesn't understand the flesh in the slightest, who wouldn't dare even take a sniff of alcohol, let alone drink any of it? Or would you rather be taught by somebody who's lived the life and knows the difference between right and wrong? Who knows the pitfalls, who knows the danger, who can give you sage advice? I pick the latter every day. I'm not a saint. Don't ever make the mistake of thinking I am. I'm not even good. I'm not even okay. I'm just a man. I do happen to understand some things, and I'm trying my very best to explain what's in my head, to articulate it verbally so that other people can see it who don't understand. And I'm not even saying that other people don't understand what I know. I'm sure there are. They're not all out talking about it, but I'm sure there are people that get it. But there's also a lot of people that don't get it, like the atheist. And there's a lot of people that would benefit from that knowledge without having to learn the hard way as I have. And I have learned the hard way. I've taken many stripes for my knowledge. I've taken a lot of beatings in my life. A lot. More than I want to remember. But they brought me to where I am. And that's important. It's important to know that. It's important to see it. So if I can be of service, which is what I'm attempting to be, I will be. But I'm not a preacher. I'm not a saint, and I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. When I first started this podcast, I had a friend who, for all I know, hasn't watched this podcast since because I smoke on the podcast, and he thought that that was uncomely. And he let me know in so many words through another friend that he didn't like that. I'm like, would you rather I pretend I didn't smoke for your entertainment? Does that make me look more pious to you? Would you rather I wear a tie and a suit because that's what other guys do? Or would you rather hear the truth? What difference does it make whether I smoke a cigarette or not? I'm not on the nightly news. This isn't a television show. This is a dude talking to another dude and some women about the truth. I know you have, Jake, but they made you stronger too. They have. They made you what you are now. They have. And I'm grateful for it. I didn't like it at the time, but I appreciate what the benefits of it are. And I'm trying to make it so that other people don't have to go through that to get to the same place. And maybe if I put it out there, I agree with that, Jake, about the cigs. You don't want me smoking either? Or you don't care? Which way are you going with that? You agree with him or you agree with me? All righty. Then knowledge is good, makes you wiser. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Doesn't make you worse. It makes you wiser. You do the wrong thing long enough, you learn what the right thing is. Even if you never actually do it, you know it, and that's the important thing. Life is challenging enough. And I hope that I make it a little easier. I hope that my contribution is beneficial. You agree with me. God sees everything. Why hide it in public to impress someone? Right. That was my point. It didn't even occur to me at the time that someone would see that and think negatively of me. I mean, Johnny Carson used to smoke all the time, and it was okay because he smoked. And I have a problem with people that are phony, you know. I smoke cigarettes. I don't drink. I don't womanize. I don't do drugs. I don't steal. I don't lie. I try very hard not to lie. I try very hard not to steal. I smoke cigarettes. What do you want to do? You know, I can pretend I don't. You'll listen to my raspy voice and think, man, that guy's got a raspy voice. It's almost like he's puffing on a cigarette every second of the day. Da-da-da-da-da. I smoke. Get over it. Dude, we're talking about God. Who cares if I have a cigarette? There were spittoons in the tabernacle. Do you know what a spittoon is? It's a place where you spit tobacco. The tabernacle was designed by God. And he included a place to spit your tobacco. I'm just saying. It is a sin to the flesh. It's not a sin to hell. So get off my back or tell me where you're perfect and we'll talk. If you're perfect, then I have a right to be humbled by you. An obligation even. But I've never met a soul, and I've met lots and lots and lots of souls, as my profession dictates. I've never met a soul that was perfect. Not one. And I'm certainly not one. I try not to cuss on here, although I do cuss like a sailor. But I do that out of respect, not out of hiding it, because when the urge strikes me, I will cuss. I'm certainly not hiding the fact that I do it. But I tell you what, you take a person that has lived long enough to see the error of their ways, and you found a person who can begin to grow, who can begin to change into something more enlightened, more wise. Wisdom is a very desirable blessing. Solomon was blessed with a lot of it. I believe that I have a taste of that. And it's not by my own doing, and I've said that every time. What I say to you does not come from my brain. Or rather, it does not come from my person. It may come from my brain, I don't know. But it's given to me. It's not, I didn't study for this. I react to it. And I'm correct. And if you find that I'm wrong, show me. Like Kevin did. I misspoke. I knew I misspoke when I said it. I was just trying to rush through it. But he caught it. Because he is a lawyer. And then I corrected it. And that's the way you do it. That's the way it's for everybody. You try to be right. Sometimes you fall short. Then you make a correction and keep moving. The problem is we've stopped as a nation, we've stopped making the corrections. And we're falling further and further back, backsliding. And if we keep going, we're going to not have a nation. A nation that was blessed by God. The nation that's divided by rivers, mentioned in the Bible. This one. And with that, it is 10 o'clock. One last time, all the things, Jake Johnson Band, paypal.me/Jake Johnson Band. Press the buttons. I love you with all my heart, and I will see you in some form, some capacity tomorrow at 8:30 to begin the book of Mark. Have a great night. I will see you then. Peace be with you. God love you. God bless you. Peace out.